Well, the Coalition is going to lose an important voice for rural and regional Australia, with Keith Pitt announcing today that he's retiring from politics. And you at home would have seen a lot of Keith here on Sky over the years, because he's been a big advocate for nuclear energy and, of course, what's good for regional Australians. He said today that for the Nationals to maintain their purpose, they had to dump net zero, and to do that, you've got to separate from your brothers and sisters in the Liberal Party, because they have, on occasions, different views to us. And of his leader, David Littleproud, he said, "We clearly have very different views on what's the priority and direction for the Nationals." Keith joins me now. Keith, may I first say, why the hell are you going? I mean, we need you now more than ever. How could you do this to us?
Firstly, it's a very generous introduction, Caleb. And I'm not retiring, I'm just going to do something else. And even though 99.9% of my electorate think I get a parliamentary pension, which I don't, there's no such thing anymore, I just have to go back and continue working to pay the mortgage like everyone else.
Indeed. So you've been offered a job elsewhere. I know you're not going to tell us what that is just yet, but obviously it was enough to lure you away from politics.
Oh, well, I'm certainly in discussions about opportunities, and I've always been someone, when the door of opportunity cracks open, I try and drive a bus through it. And I've changed careers a number of times over the years. I'm an electrician by trade, an engineer by profession. I had farms, and I'm still a farmer at heart, a small business and a pile of other things. And I've been in this position now for 11 years, and it's been a great privilege to serve the people of Hinkler in the federal parliament. I've had some extraordinary opportunities. It's a tough environment. It's a weird place to work. I'd like to say I've loved every minute of it, but that would be untrue. But I've been very happy fighting for the people that send me there to do what's right by them.
Well, as an electrician, we could do with a few more bright sparks in politics, I think it needs to be said. But how much of what you've said today about issues with the Nationals and perhaps the closeness of them to the Liberal Party and the Coalition played into your decision to leave politics?
Well, if you ask my wife, she's been asking me to give this up every week since I came into it. So there's a fair bit of pressure from other places. But my issues have always been around policies. They're not around personalities, they're not around individuals. It's around trying to ensure that the decisions that we take in the federal parliament are firstly in the national interest, but secondly in the interest of the people that I represent. And when it comes to regional seats, it's generally the ones with the least to contribute. So anything that impacts their bottom line, that makes their life harder, well, you generally find I oppose it.
Has it become difficult, do you think, to advocate for those people within the Nationals Party as it is now?
Oh, look, there's a lot of very strong voices in the National Party, as there has been for 100 years, and I'm sure there'll be 100 for 100 years into the future. But when we have a difference of opinion, that's nothing unusual, and to be honest, that's healthy for the debate. If you want to get good outcomes in terms of policy, you do have to push them around, and you do have to look at what opportunities might exist and what other things you could do that might make it work better. If we're all there to sit around and nod our heads in furious agreement, well, get someone else. That's never been something I've been supportive of, and I'd like to think that I've done my best by the people that I represent. But, mate, it's time. Time comes for all of us, and now it's mine.
Well, you talked today about the purpose of the Nationals and that for that purpose to remain there, you have to stand up for people in rural and regional Australia, and that means things like, you know, not getting on board with net zero. Is there a risk that the Nationals in its current form, if it keeps backing things like net zero, does lose that purpose and essentially becomes a moot force in Australian politics?
Well, if you look at the federal constitution of the Nationals, they literally state that they're a centre-right party, that they support the monarchy, they support Judeo-Christian values in society, and there is nothing wrong with any of that. But ultimately, you have to get people to vote for you, and to do that, you've got to do things that matter to them. You've got to demonstrate that you will always act in their interests, and that happens pretty much all of the time, I've got to say. But there are times where we should have a difference of opinion, because what's best for inter-city Sydney or Melbourne is not necessarily best for those hard-working members in coal-fired power stations, for example, or in the resources sector. And guess where they work? Well, generally they work in the regions. On other occasions, they work in big cities like Brisbane. But ultimately, their wage, their ability to pay their mortgage and educate their kids comes from the resources sector, and that's why we should be strong, not only for them, but for agriculture and all the things that make our country great. And there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever.
Of course, you say that you have no issue with people, it's with policy, but of course certain people drive certain policies. And as you said today, clearly there are differences between you and your leader on what you think the priorities and policies of the party ought to be. For the Nationals to be the party that you would like it to be, do you think Littleproud needs to be replaced as leader? Because of course, you know, this time next year, he could well be Deputy Prime Minister.
Oh, well, I hope the coalition wins. I genuinely do. I think Peter Dutton will make a great Prime Minister. The leader of the National Party is up to the room. I've got no comments on that. I'll let others make whatever comment they choose. But I want them to be strong. I want them to act in the interests of the people they represent. I want them to be successful. But most importantly, I want the people of regional Australia to have every possible opportunity that they can be given. And we see with the Labor government, things are really quite difficult, whether you're in the regions or elsewhere. They simply can't afford to live, and no matter keep their business operational, no matter have confidence to borrow money and invest. And I want our nation to be strong, Caleb. And to do that, we've got to have strong energy systems. We've got to have affordable and reliable energy and gas, because without it, manufacturing will leave this country in droves, and that is bad for the nation, it's bad for our national security, and it's bad for the people I represent in particular.
Indeed, and of course, you know, without you there, I suppose we're losing one of those big voices for rural and regional Australia, and we will lose a big voice for nuclear. Now, of course, that's something you've fought for a long time. It has now been adopted as a policy position of the coalition. That must be, on your way out, one of the proudest things you can say, that you've at least had a hand in helping make that an official policy that will be taken to an election.
This might be a surprise, mate, but it's not. I'm actually very pleased they've taken on a bold position. But the things I'm most proud of as a Member of Parliament is you get to help people. And 80%, 90% of the work of my office is literally helping people in difficult positions, whether it's our veterans, whether it's pensioners, whether the people who can't pay their bills. And, you know, I can recall any number of occasions where the outcomes would never have happened without the work of my office. And that's why I'm in politics. Yes, it's good to be involved in the national decisions and the national discussion and all the things that go with being a Member of Parliament. But ultimately, our job here is to represent people. And we've had wins with the tax office, with immigration, with visas, with pensions, with veterans. And that is actually what matters, and they're the things that I'm most proud of.
Well, Keith Pitt, we'll still have some more time with you yet until the next federal election, so you won't be going anywhere until then. Merry Christmas to you, Keith. Thank you so much for joining me.